Not only am I going to stand up, but I don't like an odd between myself and the people I'm talking to. My wife says I'm too particular, and I said, well, take comfort in that because I chose you. So, and Peter did a good job introducing me, even though I embarrassingly failed to send him a resume per his request. But my name is Kevin Cooper. I'm the Vice President of your Chamber of Commerce here in Sarasota. And for a long time, I think I, like many of you, asked the question, hey, what's going on with the homeless? You know, what are you doing with the homeless? What's happening with the homeless? And that seemed to be a question that's kind of permeated this community for a long time. And for a long time, I didn't have an answer. And really the chamber, am I giving feedback? Or is it okay? Okay. The chamber struggled to find its place in the space in terms of what to do and how to make it work. And then we started to participate in a program that Peter referenced in his introduction that was the result of a partnership between the Salvation Army here in Sarasota, New College right up the road underneath the leadership of Dr. David Brain, and the Gulf Coast Community Foundation underneath the leadership of John Thaxton. And what we started to do was host a program called the Community. This is just going to keep doing its thing, isn't it? Then I'll turn it off.
Maybe if you step back.
It's not bad.
Step back from where? It's not bad. All right. I don't know.
We're particular.
Yeah. If I can hear it, I know you can hear it. But what we started to do was participate in this thing called the Community Leadership Dialogue, and as Peter referenced, it was hosted in this room. And kind of the brilliant part about it was open to the public, and it brought together a lot of a broad swath of the community that wouldn't otherwise necessarily come together to talk homelessness. It was residents, it was businesses, it was elected officials, it was other community leaders, and most importantly, it was the homeless. A lot of time we get in the business of ascribing what we want to do for people, and we don't ask them what they need. We kind of come with an offer, and we don't kind of go the other way and say, does this work for you? So it was very valuable, as Peter referenced, to have the homeless in the room sitting here talking to us. And just to give you an example of the type of things we talked about, there was a theme each month. And it's been going on for about 5 or 6 months now. And one of the themes was the moral imperative. So as human beings, I come from a religion that preaches help. You take care of people. But when does helping hurt? And what is help? Who distributes help? Who gets help? What is help? And so we talked about these things in the room with a bunch of individuals in this community. 50, 60 individuals filled this room to talk about the moral imperative of help. Another conversation we had was about community rights and responsibilities. As a resident, I have rights and responsibilities. Business owners have rights and responsibilities. Government has rights and responsibilities. But the homeless, too, they have rights and responsibilities. And what are those rights and responsibilities, and how do they kind of coexist in an ecosystem where everybody has rights and responsibilities? What do we do with that? And as we kind of waded through the first couple conversations, you kind of go, well, is this working? How do we tweak this? How do we do this? You know, kind of a new thing. And then, you know, experience emerges, and experience is just kind of pattern recognition. You see the same thing time and time again, and you understand it. And what I saw and what I approached Ethan in the back there with the Salvation Army was, hey, I think we see some continuing patterns here. And it was kind of consensus amongst the group that there were two kind of emerging patterns. And it was one that Tom touched on, which is one, hey, we can do better. And it's not that the police department isn't doing right, and the county isn't doing right, and the city isn't doing right, but we as a community, the residents, the businesses, the homeless individuals here, we can all do better. And through these conversations, we took it a step further. And we said, you know what doing better looks like is improving the quality of life for everybody in our community. Not just the business that struggles because a panhandler stands in front of it, not just a government that struggles with the cost of homelessness, and not just the homeless individual that doesn't have a place to rest their head at night, but for everyone. And as a Chamber of Commerce, we sat back and the light went off, and we said, hey, quality of life is a Chamber of Commerce thing. One of our, bylines or whatever you call them is good life, good business. And the idea, we've been in this community almost 100 years as a Chamber of Commerce. And the thought of good life, good business is that a good quality of life and a good business community are inextricably connected. You can't have one without the other. It's symbiotic. And we said, hey, we need to get involved with that. And I said, we're really lucky in Sarasota because quality of life is something we know. Who's from Sarasota originally? Raise your hand. We have a gentleman in the back. There's a prize waiting for you outside. The rest of us, oh, you're from, so we have two.
Venice, yeah.
From Venice.
Yeah.
So we have two people. The rest of us, we came here from somewhere else. Who would say they came here because it has a great quality of life? Right. So it's something we know. It's something we know how to do. Quality of life is one of those things that we've really got down here in Sarasota. Not only is it something we've got down here in Sarasota, but it's something we beat our chest about, right? We're Sarasota, we have a great quality of life. It's something we need to carry through. And so we said, well, what do we do with that? And as a community, we engaged with some partners in the business community that said, hey, we're all about quality of life. We have a broker with Premier Sotheby's down the road that sits on our oversight team. Ian Black with Ian Black Commercial Real Estate sits on our oversight team. A gentleman named Nick that oversees SunTrust Bank here in Sarasota County sits on our team. Michael Bush, who owns the Home Resource Center, sits on our team. Ethan and myself sit on our team. And we came up with the concept that Peter mentioned, which is Q Life. That it's about quality of life, and what we need to do isn't to take away from everything that the police department is doing, that the governments are doing, but what are we doing to make sure that we're increasing the quality of life for all in this community, and how do we reflect the quality of life that we appreciate in this community into the lives of others, not just into you as an individual that I might respect for some of the reasons Peter said earlier, we share in some of the same things, but into everybody in this community, and how does that have an overall impact into what we're able to do here. There's a couple of concepts we're working on under the Q Life platform, and a lot of it goes down to something the chief talked about, which was serving the individual. We tend to look at the homeless issue and think we can put it into a nice box, and that there's, you ascribe aspirin to a headache, and that'll get rid of it. But there's a lot of different issues here. And one of the things we look at doing is decentralized coordinated entry. Meet the person where they're at. This isn't a magnet. We can't pull people to one spot and hope that we're going to help them. We need to get where they are. And just like most people look at it and say, hey, you need to come kind of meet me halfway. That's just human nature. Or, hey, I can't get to where you are. Come to me. One of the other concepts is mapping of resources. And it's interesting, I was just up in Tallahassee last week, and Tallahassee right now is talking about a program for veterans, which the chief talked about, which said, hey, how do we map resources for veterans? Well, when veterans sign up for a driver's license, they have the opportunity to have a little V placed on it, and it designates them as a veteran. And when they sign up for that V, they're going to go to a bank. And in the database, they're going to be reached out to, and they say, here are all the local resources for you as a veteran in your community. Why don't we do that with the homeless? They need resources. The third part of the Q Life concept is a mitigation team that says, I think, which we've all talked about, which is, what do you do with the people that don't want to participate? And you'd be surprised what a small percentage of the group that is. But you can't necessarily start to effectively address those you need to mitigate without offering opportunities to the people that don't need mitigation. So there's an effective tier there. And as we kind of move along in our process, there are opportunities to get involved with those three pieces, but I would challenge us as a community to start doing one thing, and this is a takeaway maybe you all can do now as we start to move forward in our program, which is when people talk about the theory of kind of communication and culture, there's one way that culture is spread amongst people, and it's diffusion. And the most effective way to diffuse a culture is to talk about it. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on where you sit, the diffusion in our culture about homelessness hasn't been the most positive message that's been sent around. I think Tom mentioned it, one of the meanest communities, or the chief mentioning, what do we do? And so I would challenge you as some of these stories come out, and as this community starts to push forward with the good things it is doing, you don't look at Central Avenue and look at the people that are sitting there. I think 3 weeks ago, 4 people came off Central Avenue into housing. And we're currently working on giving them jobs. And that's the good news. And, it's slowly becoming, for me, one of the most important things I've ever worked on. And I think it will for you. So I'll hand it back to Peter, and we'll be opening for questions. But I would challenge you to get involved, see what you can do, follow what we're doing, and be engaged. Because as they mentioned, this isn't a problem we're trying to solve. because it's not going to go away. But the more we turn away from it, the more we minimize our quality of life here in Sarasota. And I think we can do better, and I think all these folks are trying to do better. And I think I'll give credit to Leslie, who said one of the best things people, I was in a group with her, and someone said, well, what about the people that want to be homeless? And she looked at it and she said, well, you find the person that wants to be homeless, and it'll be the first person I've talked to that wants to be homeless. So let's figure that out.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.